I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need you to survive.
One, two, three. Is that showing up?
We can't.
So it's on his end?
I'm not sure. It says we're on air, live, but tell them that you can't.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Okay, good. All right, we're
Okay.
ready.
Okay. All right, we're ready, everybody. We want to apologize for that. I'm telling you, they're doing everything they can to distort the show. It's amazing, but we're gonna power through it or whatever. I was muted roughly about 4 or 5 times, and I kept trying to unmute, and it kept muting me back, and it kept muting me back. So,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Good. I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you for joining me on another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Dr. Jones, I want to ask you, what is going on with the Trump administration right now is vis-a-vis the mad policies towards Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, China. It seems like they are throwing any and everything they can up against the wall to see if anything will stick to slow down the fall of the American empire.
Yeah, I think there are two ways of looking at it. There's a rational way of looking at it that may be in the interest of the deep state, and that has to do with sovereign debt and the dollar as the currency for the world currency. So the United States is $38 trillion of debt. I think Trump added $1 trillion of debt within the last year. Okay, now where are you going to get that kind of money? What is money? Money is oil. Money used to be gold. It was backed by gold. Now it's backed by oil ever since World War II. So what type of reserves do we have? Well, Venezuela, if you put Venezuela and the oil reserves of Iran together and you multiply it by $80 a barrel, you come up with $43 trillion, which suddenly puts you back in the game. You got money to back your currency. And I think that's the only rational policy here. Now, Trump succeeded in Venezuela exactly the way he wanted to. In other other words, they flew in, they bribed the guy who was Maduro's guard, whoever it is. They flew in. 4 hours later, they got the guy out, and now they're going to put him on trial. It was perfect, and it went right to his head. And his head is not in particularly good shape right now. He's becoming more and more delusional. Maybe this is dementia. I've speculated about tertiary syphilis. Why did I say tertiary syphilis? Because grandiosity is a symptom of tertiary syphilis. And we have a guy now who is erecting gold statues to himself on his golf course. And Jews and Christian Zionists are coming and offering up incense to this golden idol. This is delusionary. This is grandiosity. But anyway, it did. So he thought if it worked in Venezuela, sure, it's going to work in Iran. Well, that was a fatal mistake. And now he's gotten himself into something that he can't resolve. He can't get out. The military is telling him it's impossible. The one thing he tried to do to get out was staging this so-called rescue of this downed pilot. And it was really an attempt to steal the uranium. And exactly, he got a replay of Operation Eagle Claw, which took place when Jimmy Carter tried to free the hostages. So it's uncanny. I think that Allah had a hand in this, to be honest with you, because this is what the Ayatollah Khomeini said. Every grain of sand that went into that engine and clogged that helicopter engine was sent there by Allah. So I'm starting to agree more and more with the Ayatollah Khomeini that America is the great Satan, and also that Iran is going to play a role in salvation history that goes back way before, 1,000 years before Islam ever existed. We're talking about Cyrus sending the Hebrew captives back to Jerusalem. We're talking about Shapur II stopping Julian the Apostate, the Roman Empire, who was going to destroy Christianity, connived with the Jews. We're talking about the Magi. I think that there is a supernatural dimension to this story.
And I was talking with someone yesterday, and they were talking about how now the U.S. dollar. Oh, it was Professor Salim Mansour from Canada, and how the U.S. dollar is now on thin ice, and how the true number one economy of the world is the Chinese. But I want to bring something to mind. If someone would go and just Google this, in 2015, CBS News did a report that said that the Chinese economy had already surpassed the United States economy in purchasing power parity. In 2016, they did another report saying that the Chinese had surpassed the U.S. in purchasing power parity. Then NBC and ABC did this. So now, when we're looking at the purchasing power parity, which is what matters more than the so-called dollar statistics, national interest, they had an article out. And I think this article was, matter of fact, it was October 15th, 2020. And it was called, and I did a 45 or 50 minute stream on this article called We're Number One No More. And the article is titled, China is now the world's largest economy. We shouldn't be shocked. And in it, I want to just read to you the first paragraph. It says, China has now displaced the U.S. to become the largest economy in the world, measured by the more refined yardstick that both the IMF and the CIA now judge to be the single best metric for comparing national economies. The IMF report shows that China's economy is 1/6 larger than America's economy. Now, with that said, is that starting to set in? Because now we see China is lapping the United States in everything. AI, fuel efficiency cars, hypersonic missiles, now the destroyers, the industry, trade, being the world's banker. Is that now starting to cause disillusion in the halls of power in the United States, and now that is one part of the irrational, insane policies that are being implemented by the West. And I want to say thank you, Sparks, for the $2 super chat also.
Yes. Okay. What's the fundamental reality here? Labor is the source of all value. There is no other source of value. Now, that's not to say other people don't think there's a source of value. If you go to Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice, the Jew Shylock tells Antonio, I'd like to lend you some money. I want to be your friend. I want to lend you money. And Antonio says, wait a minute. If it's breed of barren metal, then keep it, because that's not what friends do. What's he mean by breed of barren metal? He's talking about usury. He's talking about interest on a loan. He's talking about, and Shylock then says, my ducats can copulate faster than Laban's ewes and rams. Your ducats can't copulate. Okay, so Thomas Aquinas said, if you put 2 gold coins in a drawer and you come back a month later, you will have 2 gold coins, because money is sterile. That's what Aristotle said. If you put 2 mice in there, come back 2 months later, you'll have a drawer full of mice. Okay, money cannot copulate. Okay, money is sterile. But what happened here over this period of time, there are people that can make enormous amounts of money simply by gambling. Usury and gambling are the 2 ways that Jews make money. And that's what happened to our economy beginning in the 1980s with the leverage buyouts of Wall Street had access to money. They would go in, they'd buy up a concern, a going concern. They would load it down with debt. They'd skim the payments off the top, and the company would go belly up, and that was the end of labor. And then they say, well, it doesn't matter, because we'll outsource this to China. China will make it for us, and China's labor is much cheaper than our labor, and everything will turn out happily. Well, no, it didn't work out that way. They have the real economy. We have a dying, speculative, usurious economy that is concentrating wealth into fewer and fewer hands and impoverishing everyone else. So I'm not surprised that an accurate understanding of the economy would show that China is ahead of us.
And also, this goes right along with what I was saying, and we brought this up on a show that you and I did about what the U.S. Treasury said. They said that the United States is practically insolvent, and I want to bring this up. It says, based on the U.S. Treasury Department's fiscal year 2025 financial statements released in March 2026. The U.S. government reported a negative net position of approximately $41.72 trillion. While this has led some economists and commentators to declare the U.S. insolvent, it says this is a technical description based on an accounting rather than a functional inability to pay bills. Now, this comes from the report from the U.S. Treasury. So now, according to the definition of insolvency, the word insolvent means a person or business that cannot pay their debts as they fall due or has liabilities exceeding the total value of their assets. It signifies a state of severe financial distress where financial obligations cannot be met, often leading to restructuring or liquidation. Are we at that stage now in American empire? Because we see that her debts outweigh what comes in, because as we talked about, she's not a manufacturing power anymore. She's a service economy. And we see that the gold has shifted from west to east, and we see the financial institutions that are built up in the east now that rival the west. Are we in the liquidation and the distress phase of the American empires economically?
Well, the question is, will the dollar remain the world's reserve currency? Because as long as the dollar remains the world currency, every time someone buys oil, they have to buy dollars first. So as long as they keep buying dollars and the dollars keep coming in, we can maintain that debt. But the problem is, what happens if they don't? Well, that's exactly what Trump blundered into. How stupid can you be? I've said before, God has anointed Donald Trump to bring about the end of the American empire. Donald Trump thinks he doesn't know that. So what happens when you attack Iran? Iran closes the Straits of Hormuz, and now they're going to take a toll on every ship that comes through. And that toll is going to be paid in yuan, in Chinese currency. Well, that means people are not buying dollars anymore, which means suddenly we don't have the basis to cover our debts. And so insolvency becomes a possibility, a definite possibility at that point.
And I think what happened is the United States made a calculation, because remember that Venezuela had agreed with China to sell oil in yuan to the Chinese. And I think that they made a miscalculation, saying that if we could take this out, we can continue on dominating the oil markets in dollars. And so if they take Venezuela out, they feel they killed two birds with one stone by putting economic pressure on Cuba, and at the same time set an example for nations that want to get out of the dollar in Latin America, saying that we'll do this to you. And they moved on to Iran, and now the blowback effect is great, because as Lindsey Graham said, that if we have Venezuela, if we get Iran, we sit upon 33% of the world's oil and gas supplies, and
Right.
and that means that the United States would still be relevant regardless to what went on, because at least 33% of the world's oil supplies or gas supplies would have to be still sold in dollars because of military power. So do you think that they overestimated America military and economic capacity?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. The military, first of all, what we have here is we're coming to the end of the Third Republic. The Third Republic began in 1945 after World War II, and the weapons that won World War II were the aircraft carrier and the tank. It's that simple. They are now obsolete military technology. And how could that be? Well, they have drones and hypersonic missiles now that make these weapons, can keep these weapons from being effective. So it's asymmetric warfare. Now Iran can produce a $20,000 drone that will take out a $14 billion aircraft carrier. The aircraft carriers have to stay 600 miles off the coast of Iran. Well, that's not effective. That's the range. That's beyond the range of the jets. That cannot be effective anymore. And in addition to that, they took out all of the bases on the western shore of the Persian Gulf. Took out the radar. Those planes are blind now. This was a fundamental miscalculation of a change in technology that changed the whole game about how to wage war, and they misunderstood it. They didn't understand it.
Do you believe that God fed Trump and the American elite delusion of visions of grandeur by forcing them into this move to help bring down the republic, because they did not recognize that American power had a limit to it, and that we've moved into a new paradigm of, like you said, hypersonic missiles, drones, and America was still thinking the aircraft carrier and warplanes would be the decisive tools to be used to bring to yield Iran.
Yeah, of course they did. They were delusional. These were, now it may be dementia, it may be just this collective delusionary nature that you get when you're at the center of what seems like world power, but they misunderstood. They could not read the situation. Why is that? There are lots of reasons why you can't read the situation. Lust makes you blind. That's what Aquinas said. So he talked about the lion. The lion all he sees is that antelope, and he wants to eat that antelope and nothing else. Doesn't see he's going to fall into a trap. This could be another explanation for what's going on. But whatever it was, they were so delusional they didn't understand the technological change. So I think we're going to see right now a fundamental shift in power politics. I think Iran is going to be able to hold on and block the Straits of Hormuz. I think the United States is going to have to withdraw from Western Asia, and that will be the end of the American empire. It's going to be, so we're going to have to retrench at that
I've
point.
been saying this for years. I've been saying I said when they attack Persia and they go into war with Persia, this would be a domino effect causing the collapse, and it would be clear to the world that this would be the beginning stage of the retrenchment of American power, and that not just the United States but the UK would be forced out of West Asia. I've been saying that for years. People laughed at me when I said it, and now we see what is going on right now. So with that said, where does this leave Israel? Because we know that Israel is a welfare state. And the reason I say that is because most of her economy relies on injections of currency from the United States and from Europe, and weapons from the U.S. And now that we're seeing that the U.S. weapons are obsolete and not doing the job that they were touted to be the best at, where does this leave the colonial state of Israel in West Asia?
It's over. I mean, I've been saying for years that quoting Ehud Barak, who said no Jewish kingdom has lasted longer than 80 years. Well, I'm the same age as the state of Israel, and in 2 years we both turn 80. So the time is up. And what I was saying this before there was any evidence, but now Tel Aviv's starting to look like Gaza. Those Iranian missiles are coming through. There's no stopping them now. What you see on the other side is the acts of desperation. In other words, we can't win the war. We can't stop them militarily. So let's lash out at other people and punish other people. So they go into Lebanon now. What they're doing in Lebanon is outrageous, destroying centuries-old olive groves, making it impossible for the people to live there. Just what they did in Gaza. Or Trump saying he's going to start taking out infrastructure. Well, what you're admitting there is if you're taking out infrastructure, it means you can't get to the weapons, which means you can't stop the war. The military knows that. So now what? Are you going to continue to double down? This seems to be the way Israel and Trump, the way they think along the same way, and it's going to lead to disaster. The military are saying, well, basically cut your losses and get out. That's what we're going to have to do.
But isn't that what irrational people do? Again, when they're confronted with a situation that they have never been in before, and they can't use the tools or the leverage that they've used over the years to dominate or suppress people, they get frantic, they panic, and they get irrational, and they start doing irrational things, thinking that it will change the situation, but it only gives them that shovel to dig that hole a little deeper. And
That's
what
right.
we're looking at is frantic, irrational policies. They're frantic and irrational to us who are rational, but they're rational to the irrational mind. And they think that by doing more of this, it buys time for the empire in Israel. But in reality, it is cutting short their time because they're alienating allies and enemies alike. They're spending more capital that they don't have, whether it's economic capital or political capital or geopolitical capital. Aren't they helping to bring down the foundations of American empire and Western hegemony?
Yeah, this is the irony, of course. You think you're powerful and you keep doing this thing, and every time you act, it gets worse. It's the same thing true of Netanyahu. I mean, let's think about it. Just a year ago, there were ships passing through the Straits of Hormuz, but perfectly no problem. Nobody's charging any money. Trump enters the war, and now he's got a bigger problem than he had if he had done nothing. He can't seem to correct his course too. The Jews have no reverse gear in their car. So every time they do something and it goes wrong, it's someone else's fault. I have never heard a Jew apologize in my entire life. Okay, I say, well, I did something wrong, and we won't do it again. Every time they do something wrong and they make something worse, it's always, well, it's anti-Semitism. It's all those I told you the world was full of anti-Semites. We have to double down. We need more weapons to protect ourselves from anti-Semites. And then you give them the weapons and they make everything worse for them. So it won't go on forever. This cannot go on forever. What the Jews are abandoning Israel. They just created a flight now from Tel Aviv to Buenos Aires. A lot of Jews are going to Argentina, evidently. Apparently, Malay, who's some type of Jew, has made land available like an autonomous zone in Argentina. I have a priest friend who's on the island of Cyprus. The Jews are flying there every day trying to buy up property. So the rats are leaving the sinking ship. That's not going to change. I don't think you can call this back. I think that we are in a position where everything is moving forward according to a plan that has to be a divine plan. Because God allows you free will, and he knows you're going to make mistakes, but at a certain point he says, okay, it's over. And I'm talking about specifically the Bible. If you talk about the Hebrew people ignoring Jeremiah. So God sends you a prophet and you ignore the prophet, and then he sends you another prophet and you kill the prophet, and you're going to double down in your wickedness, okay? And at this point, okay, it's over. And that was Nebuchadnezzar shows up, he destroys the temple and drags the Hebrew people off into captivity for 70 years. Well, I think that's what's going to happen to Israel. The whole world was on the side of Israel at the beginning. No, that's not true. Okay, but let's say the West was on the side of Israel. The poor Jews had suffered during World War II. If we give them their own country, it will never happen again. All they did was make things worse. Every year it got worse. Every year they dug a hole deeper, and now they're finally falling into the hole they dug for themselves.
And so we're seeing this, but this is coming from the minds of lunatics again. And I've been saying this for years and years and years. They're not adults in their thinking. This is why they never apologize. They think owning up to something will bring shame to them, and they'll only realize, and they're not even realizing that this is a part of adulthood, of manhood, of womanhood, to recognize your wrongs, to do right, not just apologize, but to make amends for the wrongs that you've done, and then this will help be an expiation for some of the things that you've done wrong. But they double down and triple down and quadruple down on irrational policy and irrational thoughts, and they blame, as I said, when it comes to America and the West, they've always blamed everybody else for the violence. It's Nigeria's fault for Boko Haram, even though America makes Boko Haram. It is Afghanistan's fault for the Taliban, even though Ronald Reagan had the Taliban in the White House. It is extreme Islam's fault for Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, even though it was Zbigniew Brzezinski who created the Al Qaeda. And if you look at the Rambo movies, at the end of Rambo, they give credit to the Taliban by thanking the Mujahideen for their fight against the Soviets. So we see it is never the fault of the West. This hubris. Do you think this hubris is innately in the minds of those in the halls of power? Because it seems like they are drunk on hubris, even as the walls crumble, even though the empire walls crumble.
I think it's programmed into America from the beginning. And I say that because every single person every man who signed the Declaration of Independence was reading Paradise Lost, the poem by John Milton. And if they weren't reading it directly, they were reading it indirectly, quotes from it in the most famous pamphlet in American history, which was called Common Sense by Tom Paine. So what are they reading? They're reading Satan's speech at the beginning of that great poem where he wakes up in hell. He's tried to attack God, tried to overthrow God, didn't work. And now he woke up and he says, well, I'm going to try it again. And he then gives a speech where he says, the mind is its own place, and I can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. what you're saying there is there is no objective reality. That's a bad, bad idea, because we are all subjected to this objective reality. If we claim there's no objective reality, then we're never going to learn from our experiences. That, I think, is the source of this. So Donald Trump, when New York Times interviewed him, says, do you believe in international law? No. Well, what do you believe in? He says, my mind. How can you deal with someone like this? The only thing that he answers to is his own mind. Maybe your mind is not in contact with reality. Did you ever think of that? No, because I'm Satan and the mind is its own place. So it was programmed in there from the beginning, and over this period of time, let's say there was a moral consensus. So you had somebody like Emerson, who was a follower of Satan. He had in self-reliance, which is that same satanic type of attitude, like ain't nobody going to tell me what to do, and so he says nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. And then someone says, well, what if that's from the devil? Well, I'm of the devil's party. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got the idea. But he was a man who remained faithful to his wife, and we have a moral consensus in spite of this crazy philosophy, largely because you had to settle the frontier and you needed a lot of solidarity. You couldn't run around on your wife. There was no bar to run around in, okay? So you had to be this way, and it kept the country going. John Adams said we have no constitution that functions in the absence of a moral people. So you had to have a moral constitution even if you didn't have a state church. Well, that ended after World War II. And the group that did it was the Jews. No question about it. They used pornography, they used abortion, they used sexual liberation. They were behind every single subversive movement, from homosexual rights, the whole thing. They destroyed that consensus, and they destroyed us in the process. So the turning point came in 1973. Roe versus Wade gets handed. The Supreme Court allows abortion. At that point, wages stopped going up. At that point, the credit card came in. And over this period of time, from 73 to the present, trillions of dollars were sucked out of the pockets of the working man and into the coffers of the 1% on Wall Street, the 1% of the 1%. And they got so much money that they could buy the government, which is what they've done. IPAC has bought off every single, except for Thomas Massey, basically every single member of Congress. And they've got total control. But the problem is the ship is going down. So you got total control of the Titanic. Great, but the ship's going down. Now what do you do? That's where we are now.
And I often tell people about America's attitude, not just America, but the Western attitude. And this goes policy-wise, this goes economic-wise, this goes industry-wise. And another reason why America demands that other people act like them, govern like them, even civilizational states that have been around long before America, is because they are innately satanic. And what I mean by that is that what does Satan say? I want to make a kingdom like unto the Most High. And God's made man in his image and in his likeness. And what America is demanding of other nations, of other people, of other cultures, you must be a democracy. You must be this. You must do this. If you don't do this, we'll sanction you. If you don't do this, we'll assassinate you. We'll overthrow your government. We'll wage war on you. This is the actions of Satan trying to mold and put you into the mind and the state of America, to be many Americas. Do you agree with that? And this is what's causing a lot of the havoc, because America has become inebriated on that exceptionalism, and it's in the so-called city that sits upon the hill, that they thought that they could do this forever without any consequences. Do you have anything to say on that matter?
Yeah, sure. And it to some extent, it was successful. Let's just go back just a little bit. Let's say 1989. The Berlin Wall came down. That I remember the moment. I then went to Europe a little bit later, 6 months after the wall came down. Going through Eastern Europe, didn't even know it existed. There was the Iron Curtain. I'm back there. Everybody thought you were great because you were an American. They'd run up and kiss my hand, because they thought I was an American. Why did they do that? Because it seemed to be like a battle of ideas. And our ideas were superior. Nobody got hurt. Of course, that wasn't true, but I mean, that's the way it seemed at this moment. The Soviet Union collapsed. Okay, we didn't like the Soviet Union. And then they were going to be friends. They were going to help them out. It was all a lie. It was all a lie because what they did was begin to exploit the very people that we were supposed to be helping. And the institutions that were involved in this were Harvard University. Was one of the institutions. They created this Institute for International Development. They signed contracts with the State Department that they would not profit from insider trading. They violated every single contract that they made. They engaged in the looting of the Soviet Union, the public good of the Soviet Union. That money went into private hands. It went to the Jews. They created the Jewish oligarchs in Russia. They sent their money to the Jews on Wall Street. It was a disaster. We betrayed the Russian people. We had a moment where we could have instituted peace, and we deliberately chose the opposite. And so at that point, NATO starts marching eastward. I mean, I knew a guy in the Czech Republic who was involved with the Civic Forum, which overthrew communism, and he was, went to prison because of it, and now it's over. And the Americans come to him and say, "Well, how can we help you?" So he says, "Oh, good, thank you. We need better libraries. Can you help us buy books?" And then the guy says to him, "No, you didn't hear me properly. Your answer is supposed to be, we want to join NATO." He was totally disillusioned. First of all, he told me, "Look, our country is so small, we can't even have jets take off without asking permission from the next country. We're so small. Okay, why do we have to get into NATO? I don't want to get into this." And he's totally disillusioned, and then he just kind of disappeared. Margaret Thatcher shows up, big conference at the castle, and they join NATO, and you're walking toward your doom. Because finally they got to the Ukraine, and that set off the war, another war they can't win. And what you're bringing about is the very opposite of what you intended. NATO is disintegrating as we speak. It's disintegrating, largely because of Trump as well. So it was, once again, God, God always, God says, this is what you got to do. There's an easy way and there's a hard way. I hope you take the easy way. But he understands there are people out there who are going to have to learn this lesson the hard way. And unfortunately, the Americans were this group of people. They were on top of the world in 1990, 1991. And they pissed it all away because the people who were in charge don't know limits, don't have a reverse gear, and they provoked the very thing that they were afraid that never wanted to happen.
I want to quote something out of a book called The Fall of America. And it's a little paragraph. It says, "America's fall is not imminent. It is now going on. America refused to break her fall when she could have broken her fall, as the Bible teaches us. Babylon could have been healed, but she was not. She did not do anything to warrant such forgiveness." Do you agree with that statement? Because America, every time she wrongs a person, the victim becomes the aggressor, and the aggressor becomes the victim. And America is always justified in whatever she does because the media changes the storyline and makes America this benevolent state.
Yeah. Well, what you had was a disappearance of statesmen or adults. I mean, the classic example was right after World War II, the Jew Morgenthau is friends with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's got this strange power over Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he comes up with something called the Morgenthau Plan, which is basically we're going to starve Germans to death, and we're going to reduce the population by 20% by starvation. So don't feed anybody. Well, there were enough adults in the room at that point. Herbert Hoover, former president, Quaker, Okay, after World War I, they created the mission to Germany to feed the Germans because they were being boycotted by Winston Churchill, blockade by Winston Churchill. So he comes on and he says, this is Semitic vengeance. Now, I said this, Grok will look it up, and it said, it's a phrase that gets turned around, okay, but it's there. That's what they said. They were talking about the Jews could not be in control of our foreign policy because they cannot represent the American people, and they're always looking for vengeance on their enemies, and it's going to be counterproductive. And so basically the adults, Secretary of State and so on and so forth, went to Truman and said, look, if you go down this road, the Germans are going to welcome the Soviets with open arms because they'll get a better deal from the Soviets. So we have to stop this punitive Semitic vengeance. And they pulled back and they created the Marshall Plan, which wasn't perfect, but there was at least some type of course correction there. Course correction based on the fact that you cannot allow Jews to make your foreign policy. It will always end up badly. And they knew that, and they did correct. Well, no one's there. The adults are gone. Where are the adults? Is it Joe Kent? He quit. Who are the adults? Are any left? Were there anybody there ready to say, look, if you invade, if you go ahead with this Iran, this disastrous Iran thing, I'm cutting out. I'm leaving. And so, but again, you're talking about someone who is so monomaniacal, he eliminates anyone who criticizes him. So of course you're going to have a disaster under circumstances like that.
And another quote from it says, after the war and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. It comes out of Daniel in the Bible. It says, I want you to know that which will be poured means it is the deprivation of you, America, of your ever getting back into power again to attack the nations of the earth. Are we at that moment where America is losing her position militarily, economically, industry-wise, technologically, in every sphere that she once dominated in? Are we in that paradigm shift, or that aha moment?
Yeah.
Are we at that inflection point?
Yeah, I think so. This is what Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote a poem called The One-Horse Shay. It was this perfect vehicle, and it collapsed all at once. All at once, nothing first, as bubbles do when they burst. That was Calvinism. That's this type of, that's the American empire. It's all a connected thing. It's not as if you can change one part and pull that block out and everything. No, it's all going to collapse at once. That's the situation. The question is, what is there? Who's going to be in control at the beginning of the Fourth Republic? Are we going to reassert our ability? Are we going to have representative government? Because we don't have it now. We have two parties that represent the oligarchs, or IPAC, specifically the Jews, who bought up every single member of Congress except one. Are we going to get back to representative government? I just gave a talk in south here in Indiana. A bunch of great guys, two of whom are Republican office holders who have been excommunicated from their party because the party is there to manage Indiana as a conquered province of the American empire. Indiana is a conquered province. And if you start saying, well, no, we want to represent the people here, no, you're going to get kicked out of the party. That's got to change.
So again, I hear people over and over again, and as you were talking, it dawned on me. I hear people over and over again talk about this dream, because I think it's a dream. Because if we look at history, we look at science, look at mathematics, it has to be a dream. All empires failed. We cannot go back and look at where they were reconstituted into a major global power. And America being the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, more debt than all of the nations in the history of the world combined. She's at that position there. How can, when this debt bubble explode and she goes into retrenchment militarily, and she no longer has her industrial base or her manufacturing base, how can, even with her nuclear weapons, how can she be a viable global pole of power equal to Russia or China militarily and politically.
Well, she can't. But well, let's take a step back here. Who was the man who took history seriously? I mean, St. Augustine took history seriously. His successor was Vico, Giambattista Vico, the Italian philosopher from Naples. And he said, let's look at history. Augustine said, a republic can be virtuous, but an empire is always a criminal conspiracy. And Vico said, empires are human construct. Everything that is in nature begins in time, grows to maturity, and then declines. And he says this applies to nations as well, and it applies to empires. And the empire he was talking about was the Roman Empire. Okay? It became incredibly powerful, but it got old, it got decadent. Now, is that the end of the world? Well, yeah, it was. It was. I mean, say even Christians like St. Jerome, who was the translator of the Bible, thought if it's the end of the Roman Empire, it's the end of the world. Well, it didn't work out that way. And so what happened is the Holy Roman Empire replaced the Roman Empire. This is an empire. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pleasant because basically the police power of Rome collapsed. You had the barbarian Germanic hordes, my beloved ancestors, coming down and looting and pillaging places like Rome. It wasn't pleasant at all, and it took a long time because basically civilization stopped, and so within a couple of centuries, there's no more. There are no cities, there's no commerce. It's only local commerce. The Benedictine monastery became important because you had to have a castle because your country is constantly overrun by either Vikings from the north or Saracens from the south. They show up, you just got to go into the castle, wait it out, and then come back out again. It took a long time, but what came about after that was basically the unification of Europe under Christian auspices, and you had the greatest civilization that the world had ever seen. So I think we should think of ourselves at this moment in time, that if the American empire is going to fail, maybe a new republic, we have plenty of resources. I mean, it's not as if it can happen in Italy. I mean, Italy's what? It's like this mountainous peninsula where it's hard to get anywhere except by boat. They have virtually no natural resources, and yet they throve. They were a thriving place. The cutting edge of every single metric you can think of at the time of Shakespeare. I mean, everybody admired the Roman Empire. That was, at that time, the successor of Rome. It can come back. We can come back, but only if we have the proper principles. And one of the proper principles, labor is the source of all value. You cannot substitute finance for labor. That's why China is superior to us now. They got involved in labor. They're outproducing us. We're gamblers. Look at what's happening in the Trump White House right now. The insiders are placing bets. Like, Dad, what are you going to do? Tell me, Dad. So Barron places a $500 million bet. Thanks, Dad. This is ridiculous. This is not economic. This is irrationality on steroids. And we've got to, so what is the key to understand? Repentance. This is what God called for the Hebrew people. You got to repent. You did something wrong. We as a people have gone astray. We've been led astray. I mean, the Jews led us astray. They're part of the problem. But I mean, we went along with it to a large extent, and now we've got to understand that was wrong, and we're going to do it right now. And we're going to repent and say we're sorry.
I think the reconstitution of the American empire is an impossibility mathematically and historically.
He just froze up.
Oh man, they are really doing this for real today. Okay, can you hear me?
It shut down?
No. I'm back. I don't understand. See, do you see what I mean when we talk about these things? Do you see what happens in the
Yeah,
middle of our conversation? And
yeah,
this is not random. This is not
yeah.
random. But I don't think that America can reconstitute herself in such a way. When we look at the collapse of Babylon and we look at the collapse of the Roman Empire, it's a major distinction with the collapse of the American empire today. And I'm going to tell you why. The hubris is off the charts. Another thing, people are invested in maintaining the lie at all costs, and we are at a time where they're not fighting with bows and arrows. They're not fighting with swords, and they're not fighting with cannons. Today, they're fighting with hypersonic weapons. They're fighting with nuclear weapons, and I believe the leadership of America is prepared to try to take the entire world down. If they cannot rule, they would rather rule over the ashes or leave nobody in a position to rule. And why do I say this? It's because my mother would always tell me to listen to what a person says, but better yet, watch their actions. And all of the actions of the American empire is showing that they are preparing for all out war, and they want to create as much chaos as they can so they can bring what they believe another order out of that chaos.
They want to hold on forever to the empire, and the empire will not last forever. Okay, so but let's. It never should have happened in the first place. So when I look, I talked to you about everybody's reading Paradise Lost, but there was another angle to this, and so uh, Benjamin Franklin comes out of the convention, the Constitutional Convention, and the woman says, "What kind of government do we have?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." This was always intended to be a republic. We had natural borders, two big oceans that were going to protect us. We should not have gone into this imperial venture. Well, now we had to learn that the hard way. How many times could we have stopped? Do you ever think of, I do this all the time. I go back and say, if only we hadn't gotten involved in World War One. If only we hadn't gotten involved in World War II. If only Trump hadn't invaded. But it's all this type of thing. There was all along the way. There were options where we could have chosen peace. We could have chosen to stay and enrich the people of this country rather than impoverish them to fuel the dreams of delusionary leaders who want to rule the world. But, it didn't happen. So now we have to learn the hard way. So I keep praying for, what should I say, a soft landing? Is that what they call it? An off ramp, a soft landing? I keep praying that somehow the adults are going to show up in the room and say, no, we're not doing that. Apparently they did that when Trump asked for the nuclear codes. So God bless whoever did that. They're not going to give this maniac access to nuclear weapons. That's where it has to happen. We have to pray for peace. I mean, what can we do? What can I do?
I want to play a clip of this interview that I did with former Assistant Secretary of the War Department or the Defense Department and the Ambassador Freeman, and I want you to get your take right after this. So I'm going to play this. I can hear you now. Okay. I want to start off before we talk about Iran. Before we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, what is going on? What I see in America now is political decay, political rot. When you have the head of state lashing out, using undiplomatic terms, condemning everybody and everything, and if you don't agree with him, he lambasts you. And then I see the irrational political moves and policies that they've initiated and ignoring the will of the people. Wouldn't you say that was a sign of political rot, of political decay?
Well, I think it surely is. It's the product of a long history of progressive dismissal of the constitutional constraints and the separation of powers. The Congress is missing in action, absent without leave, defaulting on its responsibilities. The Supreme Court has been politically packed in such a way that it defers to the president, who is the leader of a political cult and whose mental stability is highly questionable. I think if you look at him in this second term, you see increasing the signs of both physical and mental deterioration, dementia, basically. I live in a geezer warehouse in New Hampshire, and I'm very familiar with dementia and the signs of it, and I recognize it when I see it. But we have a problem because he is the leader of a political cult which will follow him wherever he goes, whatever he says, they will defend or approve. And therefore, the 25th Amendment, which would normally be invoked, and I note the NAACP has been one of the first groups to call for the 25th Amendment to be employed. This is poorly drafted. It basically requires the vice president to have the backing of the cabinet, but the vice president, meaning J.D. Vance, is in a rivalry with Marco Rubio. He is not very popular, to put it mildly, and the cabinet is composed of incompetent sycophants. So the chances that this amendment could be utilized in the manner it was intended to be utilized is near zero. So I think we have a whole breakdown. We have an executive branch, which is basically off its head or off its meds, maybe. We have a Congress that does nothing except salute whatever the president says. We have a Democratic opposition, which is not effective as an opposition, poorly led, not representative of the mass of voters in the country. And we have a Supreme Court that is partisan and not legitimate in the eyes of most people. So yes, I would say this is a severe case of decadence, degeneration, and as you put it, rot. And I don't know what to do about it. I'm 83. I don't have a lot of time left. I don't expect to see correction of this in my lifetime. But the consequences are enormous. Our civil liberties have been suspended. Freedom of speech? No. Not on certain topics, certainly. Academic freedom? No. You can't teach without the ICE Gestapo looking over your shoulder. And we no longer have safety on the street. A great part of the population, which is here with dubious legality, is in jeopardy. The rest of us, even me, I look like a white American. I guess I am mostly white, but if you're anything else, you're in trouble. And so I find this disgusting, and I imagine there are a great many other Americans who do find it disgusting. So we have the collapse of our constitutional democracy at home and the total abandonment of respect for international law and human decency abroad. We are participants in genocide. And
So, Beck, what is your comment on that? Is he on the money, or are we in the midst of absolute political rot and decay at the soul of the so-called American Republic and Empire?
Well, what did Sun Tzu say? He said, if you don't know who you are and you can't identify the enemy, you will lose every battle. Mr. Freeman, God bless him, his heart's in the right place, but he can't identify the enemy. The one word I found missing from that whole discourse was the word Jew. Did you talk about the influence of Bibi Netanyahu calling up J.D. Vance in the middle of the negotiations? Did you talk about the influence that Netanyahu has in finally pushing Trump into this war? Did you talk about IPAC's control of the Congress? Did you talk about the ADL, the main strangler of free speech in this country? In each area that he talked about, there's a group of people who are agitating, and he's been trained not to mention them. Well, we can't do that anymore. This is, I mean, God bless him, but you know, I'm almost old as he is. Okay, he's 5 years older than me. Okay, great. Okay, but the world has changed, and unless we can identify the enemy, we are not going to get any farther along the road to recovery. That's what we have to do. And I'm saying this is also a spiritual battle. And that dimension is missing from his speech as well.
Not to take anything away from Chaz Freeman, he did mention the Jews, and he did mention Bibi Netanyahu, and he talked about the Jews' stranglehold over the U.S. foreign policy.
Okay, I take it all back. Put it in the video, okay? It's just a trap. You kind of trap me here, okay? Take it all back.
I just wanted to play a little clip of it, but the video, it's a real good interview with, and he mentions those things. So I'm not his defender, but I'm going to tell the truth regardless. He did bring those things up.
Great.
And
then we're heading in the right direction. We have to identify the enemy.
So with the last few minutes left, I want to get your, I want to play a short clip for you, and I want you to give me your opinion on this, because you brought this up about Iran using the yuan, and remember that China had already allowed Iran to use the SIPS system, which is the opposite of SWIFT's. The U.S. and European dominated system, to go around sanctions. And also I want to add that China has now agreed with Iran to have overland transit zones for trading to offset whatever sanctions that the United States is saying. So I want the world to know that, because some people are not with that. But I want to play this clip here, and then I want your opinion after.
China has drawn a hard legal line against American sanctions, and for the first time in history, it has actually enforced it. On Saturday, China's Ministry of Commerce issued its first ever blocking order under its 2021 blocking rules, a legal mechanism designed to neutralize the extraterritorial reach of foreign laws. The order prohibits any Chinese entity from recognizing, enforcing, or complying with U.S. sanctions imposed on 5 Chinese petrochemical companies, all accused of buying Iranian crude oil. The legal basis for China's rules dates back to January 2021, but Saturday marks the first time Beijing has actually issued a concrete prohibition order under them. It is a significant shift from diplomatic protest to active legal countermeasure. So who are the 5 companies at the center of this? They include Hengli Petrochemicals' Dalian refinery and 4 so-called teapot refineries: Shandong Jincheng Petrochemical Group, Hebei Xinhai Chemical Group, Shuguang Luqing Petrochemical, and Shandong Shengxing Chemical. Teapot refineries are smaller independent facilities that operate outside China's state-owned oil giants like Sinopec. They account for a quarter of China's total refinery capacity and have long capitalized on heavily discounted crude from sanctioned countries, including Iran, Russia, and Venezuela. The US Treasury's OFAC described Hengli as one of Tehran's most valued customers, alleging it purchased billions of dollars worth of Iranian oil. China, for its part, bought more than 80% of all oil Iran shipped in 2025. Washington's sanctions, imposed under Trump's maximum pressure campaign, placed the 5 companies on the specially designated nationals list, effectively cutting them off from the US financial system and freezing their assets. Beijing's blocking order took effect immediately upon publication, and China's Commerce Ministry stated that the US measures improperly restrict Chinese companies from conducting normal trade activities with third countries in violation of international law. The timing is pointed. Washington and Tehran remain at a diplomatic standstill, with no permanent resolution in sight for the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran in late February. China has consistently opposed the war and the accompanying sanctions regime, and Saturday's move signals that Beijing is now willing to use legal tools, not just words, to push back. Whether the blocking order has real-world teeth, given America's grip on the global financial system, remains to be seen. But as a statement of intent, it is the clearest China has made yet.
So in closing, now before you comment on that, I want to read another excerpt from the book that I was reading from. And it says, America is falling. She is now losing her power and authority that she was enjoying in foreign lands. Her fall is very visible. Wherever her authority has been exercised, the people are now crying out in one voice, leave us, leave us. Americans go home to America. The citizens of other countries are telling the American citizens to leave us. America no longer has friends. America and England deposited their little brother Israel on foreign soil, Palestine, which is Arab land. They deprived the Arabs of their own land and sent them into exile. This injustice against the Arabs is now costing America the power and authority that she once exercised in the East. She is on her way out of the Near East. This means bloodshed and plenty of it. Are we at that point?
Yes, obviously. What was the hidden grammar of the British Empire and the American Empire that succeeded? It's called the Mackinder thesis. Came out. Halford Mackinder wrote the book at the beginning of the 20th century, and he said basically the United States and England, they are island nations. If you control the sea lanes, you can control the world, and certain choke points, you can control commerce. What you don't want to allow is the unification of the Eurasian landmass. Well, the Sanctions Office has brought about the unification of the Eurasian landmass because they overimposed. The last time I checked, 40% of the world's population was under sanctions. Now, that got way out of control. Again, I hate to say that. I know what I sound like here, but the sanctions office at the Treasury Department is a Jewish operation. People like Stuart Eisenstadt, I don't know whether he's still there, but he used it to loot gold from Switzerland. It's been that type of thing, and they overplayed their hand. They should have just said, look, we're interested in commerce more than punishment. Some adult should have walked into the room and says, look, if we keep going like this, nobody's going to want to deal with us. But nobody, what happened? They weren't there. Those adults never showed up in the room, and as a result, these people who don't know limits, who are in rebellion against Logos, the people who killed the Logos incarnate, don't believe in limits, they believe in will, and now they got something to deal with that they didn't intend, unintended consequences, and it's all going to fall apart. And so, I'm sorry, but we never should have gotten involved in this in the first place, and if we can repent and go back to the republic that we were supposed to be from the beginning, that's a step in the right direction.
And in closing, the last quote from the book that I want to bring up, because now we're looking at them attacking Iran, and we're looking at Iran saying that it is not going to abandon Palestine, and we're looking at the movement that's going on with the Chinese warships coming into play. We see Russian warships in the Caspian Sea and around that area. We see their Chinese and Russian cargo planes in and out of Iran to deliver stuff to them. And it's almost prophetic what this says here. It says, in the Near East, there stands navies which are neither American nor British. They are there to drive America out. The skies over there are beginning to thicken with foreign planes, not domestic planes, but foreign planes, carrying deadly weapons, guns, and bombs. They will not be satisfied as long as Israel is in Palestine. The ball has come to a bursting point. We are in a troubled world. We are in a world that is now erupting. Would you concur with those, with that statement there? Because This is what is now bubbling over and boiling over across all of West Asia.
Yeah, and they can't stop it. So again, I keep thinking, gee, if we had only, why did the CIA join up with the English to overthrow Mossadegh so that British Petroleum could exploit Iran? It's one of those things where the Iranians loved Americans. They thought they were honest brokers. And once again, we did the wrong thing. And now finally the bill is coming due. I mean, let's just pray for a soft landing. That's all I can say at this point.
Thank you so much once again for coming on the platform. As always, I love your animation. I love your straightforwardness. I appreciate that. Hey, be safe, be blessed, and I'll send you the video in a few minutes.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, assalamu alaikum. And everybody, I want to say this to everybody: do right by others, not because there's some material gain to be had or because of some accolades to be had. Do right by others because it's the right, humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, and beautiful mother would always say, God sits high on the throne of power, but he looks low at the actions of man. Know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the supreme being of freedom, justice, and equality has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, remember to stay righteous, because righteousness is the only thing that gets you out of here. Hey, mama, your baby boy still loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody. Deuces.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your faith. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost.